human jobs here are at risk? And what is your philosophy behind that?
We are entering an era of unleashed productivity that we've never seen before. And AI really allows that at massive scale in terms of the automation and ability to move quickly and eliminate tasks that humans do today.
And everyone's job is going to be automated out for the most part. Like, I think that what it will lead to is something, like, I think that post-labor economics is far more spiritual than it is anything like we know today.
One thing that forgot to add is that you're a serial entrepreneur, you're a philosopher, but last but not the least, you're a ladies' man. So.
No. I've actually calmed a lot of that down. I have actually calmed down a lot of that, man.
Episode 4 of the Wealth Wave podcast. My name is Caleb Solomon, the co-founder of Jara Capital, and I'm here with my incredible co-host Toyyib Morakinyo. How's it going, my brother? What's going on?
I'm doing well, my man. I'm doing well. Family's great. Things are going well. I'm looking forward to today's episode for sure.
Exciting episode indeed. And we are thrilled again to have you on this journey with us. And as always, our primary goal is to educate, enlighten, and entertain our audience in technology, economy, and real estate while inspiring you guys to take action. We have an amazing guest with us today. His name is Chizi. So I'll yield the floor to Toyyib. Can you do it justice to his for a quick introduction to Chizi?
That's a big one, okay? Because you're right. We have a very, very special guest in the house. Someone who I am calling the unofficial third co-founder of Jara Capital, and I will explain what I mean by that very, very shortly.
Oh man,
but you know what?
I'd love to see it.
First of all, let me just share the official bio and the career experience of Chizi, who has over 8 years of experience in engineering design, startup operations, product marketing, and management. The man holds a Bachelor of Engineering degree in mechanical engineering and has his engineering and training license, skilled in creating and managing web-based products and services, leveraging AI and automation. The guy's passionate about technology, culture, enterprise business systems. He's on a mission to empower businesses and communities with AI and automation tools. And certainly, as you can imagine, someone like this is involved in many projects, but just 3 key projects to highlight here. 1, Dumele, which is actually around scaling AI solutions for social and economic development in Africa. He's also involved in Smart Sail Inc., which is developing smart sailing devices using AI and IoT for energy consumption and safe optimization. And last, but certainly not the least, Unity app, which is all around connecting social justice activists and organizations globally. The man has a proven record of delivering successful products and services, generating revenue growth, impacting clients and partners. Once again, guys, we have Chizi Uwaga here.
Yeah, one thing
but
to
before I even throw it back to him real quick, right? And I mentioned he's the third unofficial co-founder of Jara Capital, and you all might be wondering what are you talking about, right? The truth is, Caleb and I, and all that we've been able to accomplish in real estate, in this podcast, forming Jara Capital, becoming business partners, becoming friends, all of that we owe, and it's all because of Chizi. Chizi is the one who put us all together in an Instagram post and said, you know what, you two are talking about real estate, you both are in Dallas, you both should get to know each other, and the rest is history. So Chizi, welcome, and thank you for joining, my brother.
Yeah, Chizi, before you jump in here, one thing that forgot to add is that you're a serial entrepreneur, you're a philosopher, but last but not the least, you're a ladies' man. So
no. I've actually calmed a lot of that down. I have actually calmed down a lot of that, man. Oh man. But actually, just a very quick thing, Smart Seal is more so that is in the blockchain sector. We have not necessarily done anything with AI yet, but actually what we do is, just quickly, we actually connect physical things to the blockchain using cryptographic principles, using NFCs, near field communication devices, like all those chips you have in the books as you actually take them out of the library, those RFID chips, yeah, all of that. But man, this is an honor to be here. I have been seeing what you guys have been doing. It has been phenomenal, definitely from a business perspective. The way, just the how you guys have actually come together and actually what you've been able to do is really fascinating to actually see. And, I'm actually very proud of that. I don't want to take any sort of ownership for actually bringing you guys together. Ultimately, the energy had to come anyway. And it's so fascinating to see what is actually going to come to pass, right? Just here with this and then with everything that you guys are doing and all the things that you guys are going to do. So, man, I am appreciative of this, Toyyib, Caleb. This is going to be fun. I actually definitely look forward to contributing in this and then any other thing else after the fact. So, appreciate it. The ladies' man side is funny.
Always appreciate you, brother.
Yes,
absolutely, bro.
Again,
absolutely,
we
absolutely.
definitely have a huge packed agenda today, so I would like to set the stage
Yes.
in terms of the topics that we'll be discussing. So I think there's going to be 3 segments. The first segment I'm going to be talking about with the proliferation of AI today is the world transitioning to the era of UBI. With UBI basically stands for the Universal Basic Income. Will there be a world where there's zero employment, and also how does the post-labor economics look like, and the role of the government? We'll talk about that. Also, we're going to be talking about from the I think there was this venture capital who's now an investor talked about how AI is actually not only disrupting the big Star Wars company or the big legacy companies, but now it's also disrupting the venture capital community. We'll double click on that. And lastly, we'll have some quick takes around Adam Newman looking to buy real estate. Why is he looking to consider that, especially in this current high interest rate environment? And also, we'll talk about spatial computing. Is it here to stay? If you recall, back in the 90s with the internet, and they moved into the cloud, and now we moved into the spatial computing. What is the trend line looking like, and is it here to stay? And lastly, I think the CPI numbers came out in January, and it blew through expectations. So is the Fed going to panic and blink and push it for next year, or do they still have the cojones to reduce the interest rate? So we're going to be talking about that. So with that, I wanted to start on the first topic around the the transition now to universal basic income, and I'm going to share a few slides here to set the stage. So let me share my screen real quick. Share, and there was this what I call a YouTuber, or he's like he does AI, like he develops AI, and his name is David Shapiro, and he was talking about how do we get to UBI and also the post-labor economics today. And there were 4 assumptions that he made in the video. He talked about 1, the current arc of AI continues into the foreseeable future. Number 2 was like better, faster, cheaper, and safer. Is it here to stay? And what does that mean? Number 3 was around the frontier of automation subsume human tasks. AI is permitted not only through the back office operations today, but through different industries. And also, because of this assumption, it will lead to permanent unemployment will rise and also accelerate. And so that was the thing that he was talking about. And there were 4 phases that he talked about around. The phase 1 will lead to the creative jobs being disrupted. Number 2 is around human productivity will rise as AI saturation ramps up. And the phase 3 was around the old paradigm shift. So meaning that because of AI proliferation, companies will not be incentivized to employ people anymore because robots will be taking their jobs. And the phase 4 will lead to the UBI. I'd like to play a quick segment of that video, and then we can jump in here around what he meant by that. So I'll do a quick screen share again just to make sure that. So I guess before I play that video again, I think the first question would be for you, Chizi, since you're very passionate about this world of AI and also some of the implications and repercussions. Is universal basic income a feasible solution to long-term repercussions of AI potentially replacing, humans in terms of their jobs and their avocation.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much for that prompt. So I think that when we actually think of UBI, right, I think that there are actually two ways to actually think about it, right? UBI in this case being universal basic income, right? There is the understanding that people just might have an external entity. It could be a government, it could be a company, it could be whomever, who essentially provides income on an ongoing basis to a set of people, right? The rationale for universal basic income is that enough power or enough money is being collected in a few places, and so for the sake of being, for actually the sake of having that as a viable economy, right? Because actually technology is actually preceding all these forms of evolution, right? It is actually forcing everything to happen. They would need to assign income to people. So UBI from actually the perspective of one who is not in current power as it's actually defined, right? Thinks of UBI as someone else, external powerful entity given to me, right? Then there is UBI that is a function of the proliferation of capitalism at scale, the maxing of it, right? It is actually being able to compete in the market, right? To be able to obtain value and actually have lower prices that other people can purchase. Essentially, you have a scenario where we have a world that had achieved economies of scale as a function of centralization, but actually because of artificial intelligence, it's rapidly decentralizing. Now, prior to actually answering that question, there is something which he mentioned, right? And I think that all those phases kind of happen at once. It is not actually going to be phased out because you already have the creative economy gone. And so what you now have is a scenario where you could end up, because artificial intelligence has actually given us the ability to actually have cognitive automation in a particular domain space. What you can do is add all tools and actually multiple functions to that, and then you can actually create an agent that could actually replace someone. Of course, what that does is it gives a powerful entity that we think of UBI in this format more power, right? Because they don't need to purchase, or actually they don't need to essentially pay for someone. They could just have this agentic sort of network and framework and infrastructure that essentially automates all the tasks at scale. And everyone's job is going to be automated out for the most part. Like, I think that what it will lead to is something, like, I think that post-labor economics is far more spiritual than it is anything like we know today, right? But what you now have is a scenario where, because you have an agentic structure that a large entity can use to be able to actually deal with workforce optimization and not have to pay for people, that same software framework already is available to the public, because even the powerful entities know that they don't have a moat on artificial intelligence. Google and OpenAI, they've all verified it. Open source is going to actually take them. So what you have is a scenario where the capitalistic environment that we've seen kind of in this digital scape is now being decentralized at max to everyone else, where 2 to 3 people can actually build a $50 million company. So what you have is a proliferation of competition, and that in itself is a form of UBI, where the bigger guys don't have something special, right? Because they would need to compete with the larger network of people, because all these people will be able to build small businesses at scale, right? So you have a decentralization of power that is actually being forced. As much as that is as much as that's happening, if you look at the trend line of, hey, open source will overtake closed source LLMs, in this case, large language models, right? Open source large language models will overtake closed source, which is the Googles of the world, even with Gemini and its 1 million tokens, which is, I don't think people understand. That just happened 2 days ago. That's a massive shift in AI that just took place, but no one is really talking about that. Yeah. But even with all that, they know that open source is going to be that. So UBI, where an entity collects power and then gives, versus UBI that is just a maxing of capitalism that is in the digital space, right? So I think that the second one is going to take place, as opposed to people having to think of ways to actually disseminate power back to people. It's already being taken away, because all those agentic structures are actually made by people who are then fired, who then go make stuff and then compete, it just, you can never capture all the power there. They know that they can't capture that. Open source will win. And if that's the case, UBI is actually going to be that as a function of larger entities being destroyed because they can't compete anymore.
Toyyib, to that you say what? I mean, from what I'm hearing, Toyyib, I mean, Chizi talk about the proliferation of capital, like at scale, meaning that
Yes.
instead of, for example, let's say Disney can't control the content moderation anymore because now with the creation of this large LLM models with the speech to text or the text to videos, now somebody in his home can create a mini, I don't know, a mini like Cinderella video, I don't know, something like a movie that if that person has large sums of following, like for example, Mr. Beast, if he can leverage these tools, he could create a video or a movie that he could sell. So, from your perspective, Toyyib, do you think that, I mean, human jobs here are at risk? And what is your philosophy behind that?
Yeah, Chiz, you made some great points, I think, around the impactful shifts that we're seeing certainly with AI in the marketplace today, no doubt about it. But we could talk about the UBI piece a little more because it depends on how you're defining it. But Caleb, to answer your question directly around what's going to be the impact of AI, right, in the job marketplace today, and I've said this even on the last podcast, there's no doubt that I think we are entering an era of unleashed productivity that we've never seen before. And AI really allows that at massive scale in terms of the automation and ability to move quickly and eliminate tasks that humans do today. So yes, I agree that we will see the death of many jobs and many industries and disruption in many industries. Where I might go back and forth with my brother here, Chizi, is I'm also on the other side of that. We'll also see the rise and the birth of many new jobs and many new industries. And that's a perfect example to what Caleb just mentioned around Mr. Beast versus Disney. In the past, there are certain large industries, large companies who are in some ways gatekeepers in their sectors. Disney being a large mammoth. Before you could get on TV, you needed to maybe go through Disney and all these big wigs to give you the ability to stand up on stage and have access to millions of people. When you have someone like a Mr. Beast, he's now able to operate at a much smaller scale with maybe I don't know how big his team is, but they're not going to be at the size of a Disney. But when you're leveraging AI, you're able to have directors on stage. You're able to use that to be your director, right? Your producers. You don't need a full-length large scale, but you do have the opportunity as a creative now to create content that gives you the audience of millions of people, right? And that's a new industry that's being spun up because of the new AI tools that we have today. So do I agree that jobs are going away? Absolutely. You can bet it. I'm already seeing it now. But do I believe that new jobs are coming and new industries are going to rise from this? Absolutely as well.
If I can please just add something to that. I think that we are more so in agreement than we are not because if the proliferation of capital at max takes place, that is because people now have the ability to create massive wealth without the high barrier to entry, right? Being
Yes.
able to hire people, which is the human capital, without the human capital barrier. Something actually which I would like to draw that as an analogy on is that you previously had production houses, right, that actually made video, things of that nature. Now we are here doing this, right? Video
Yes.
virility in the age of social media. Each of those videos and each of those clips would have taken hours of work to do. And I think that at max, right, it is actually going to be very content driven, right? This is how people will essentially create new kinds of value. I believe it is going to be around maybe actually purely the creative, but I think that it will also, AI actually gives us the ability to get into research into technology like we've never seen before. Currently, the world understands the English language, right, has 1/80th of all the algorithms that exist that they know of, right? Like Stephen Wolfram did a particular that is analysis, said that the English language only has 1/80th of all the algorithms, right? 1/80th. So think of the research domain that is entirely now open to us. You have people using the Genome Project that actually have found 2 million new materials. I mean, what it does is just open us up to be able to create technology like we did not think was possible. It will look interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys certainly make a good point around how AI is definitely going to be a disruptor to businesses, small or large, and how potential humans could be at risk. However, I think also I view, I mean, to answer the question around is human job at risk and what I think Toyyib is definitely right in terms of even though there could be some disrupting in certain segments of the industry or certain parts of profession, let's say customer service or anything that could be automated away. For example, from a legal perspective, instead of the person, and we'd have been touching that on the next segment, where instead of spending 10 hours to review a case, now an LLM model, an AI could definitely do that within seconds. That is definitely powerful. So now the question is, I like to double click on the UBIP because UBI, just to define it, from my perspective, is the proposed social welfare program where all citizens of a country and region will receive regular unconditional payment from the government, regardless of their income or employment status. And the goals behind UBI is around to reduce poverty and inequality. That's the intent behind that. Number two is around improving the well-being and security, well-being and the economic security. And number three is around how do we simplify the social safety net. So the philosophical question I want to ask is that, do we think that giving people money, just let's say, assuming the premise that there'll be no unemployment, there'll be zero employment for people, let's say, assuming in a world where robots takes everybody's jobs, nobody's working, and now the government has to find a way to keep the masses in check by providing some sort of funds, to them. Do we believe that is the right solution? Because I don't think it is the right solution. Why? Because I think at the end of the day, for example, Maslow's theory of need says what? It says that human beings have physiological needs around food, water, shelter, clothing. The next thing is around safety and security. The next around the lab and belonging, self-esteem, and then the last piece was around self-actualization. I think Maslow got it wrong. It's supposed to be the opposite. Self-actualization, which is around finding what your purpose in life is, and then you work backwards to figure out how you can become a value to the society. So I think this AI, assuming in a world where robots, let's say, take people's job, now people have to actually look within themselves and figure out, what is my gift? What am I born to do, and how can I leverage AI to enable to execute, to bring value to this world, instead of me waiting for a check from the government? So I want to, again, double click on that. Maybe Toyyib want to go ahead. Is UBI the solution?
This is a great question, and I'm researching a lot around UBI and learning about it. And I guess for me, mentally, I'm not even there yet around the world where UBI is the solution. I see, we can say with AI disruption, and even both on the hardware and the software space. And that means robots being able to come in and do some of the physical activities that we might hire other humans to do. Even if you were to lose your jobs in those spaces, I think what we need is an expansion of social safety nets, to your point, Caleb, right? Unemployment checks, expanding Medicare and Medicaid, those kind of things, yes. But to get to a world where we have zero jobs, and as a result, what we're doing as humans is sending out money to each individual. One, because of the way money works, I don't even see how that's even a system in the first place, right? Like, if you all have $0 and then everybody all of a sudden gets 1,000, it's almost like that's not a real exchange of a value of goods anyways. And then two, even if we're talking about the money, in a world where you no longer have human labor and human labor to create products and services, one can make the argument that, well, then money in itself becomes valueless, right? Like, if you think about the value of money to be a means of exchange for human products and services, So why, if robots are able to do all these jobs, why do I even need money in the first place? I'm trying to think about that
And that
one,
is my
right?
point.
Like if you had a bunch of
My point
money
is
and
good.
and I
That's why we
and
need
you
money.
take it with you on Mars, you don't need money to, like, right? A dollar doesn't do anything for you while you're on Mars. It doesn't do anything for you while you're in the Sahara Desert. So I don't understand how money becomes where we should focus. But I do think of humans as being incredibly resilient and entrepreneurial. And Caleb, you're right. We will start to ask the question of what are the things that I'm great at, that I bring value, that brings me joy, and find ways to live in those means. Because now money should be off the table, and UBI, I don't see how that becomes the answer at all. I think we start thinking about those self-actualization questions, and finding ways to connect with other humans, and maybe that becomes the new focus.
Chizi, what do you say to that?
Man, yeah, like I want to come back to those four phases,
Yeah.
which Mr. Shapiro mentioned. First is that the creative, right, actually just gets taken out, and there is something about that because the creative is what human beings will have access to the most, similar to social media, right? Video and sharing content has now been actually proliferated at scale, right? So phase one has already happened. Hollywood is dead. We saw people actually say that the writing strike was actually right on time with proliferation of ChatGPT 3 and 3.5. Like, I don't know that as if people noticed, right? And so with this text to video model, Hollywood is gone, right? You guys just talked about Mr. Beast, things of that nature. So it is dead or dying. So that's phase one, right? And like I'm actually coming to a point here. Phase two, right? Tech layoffs in the tens of thousands. Thank God for everyone who has what they have right now. But just looking at the reality of it, I think that people are actually downplaying the same way that we've seen. That is our beautiful government downplay certain things that have actually happened as they're happening. And this is not even the end of Q1 yet, right? And we have seen thousands. I think that it's mostly because of artificial intelligence, especially once you start to see what these models can do, you're like, okay, this is just a no-brainer, right? Like if I can think of this and scale this out, they have already done this, right? So that's two. So that's already happened, right? Now, phase three, he said old paradigm shift. What does a paradigm shift mean? Everything that we think of how this is supposed to happen is not going to be the case. So, old paradigm shift means that one could end up. So this is where the spiritual or self-actualization side becomes very important, but also the lack of government. Government is going to be disrupted. If you have the proliferation of capital at scale, right, centralization, which is essentially what government is, does not take place. It will break up into multiple things. Do you see the Civil War-esque concept? Do you see the inter and intra geopolitical things taking place? I mean, we're not just talking about AI within the West, we're talking about AI across the world, right? So that paradigm shift is already taking place. Yes, we can call it geopolitical stress, but AI is going to have an incredible, greater impact on that, right? So those paradigm shifts and how we think about government will change. If we have to think about how ourselves changes, then how we think of coordination then changes. Now, it gives you the ability to create more. That is a paradigm shift. The same way social media gave people the ability to create more content, you have the ability to actually create more, right? And because you can actually create more, you can build more. There will still be the need to do more. AI gives us the ability to do more. So money will still be important to be able to organize humanity and, actually people in actually certain pockets, right? And then UBI, that's so how you had the phase four of, okay, UBI then happens, showcases that if the paradigm shift of how we talk about rulership of government and things of that nature fundamentally changes, then that proliferation of capital at scale is the UBI, instead of us thinking of from a centralized government perspective. And I think that is very hard for people to actually think of, right? But you talked about the whole legal sector, right? And actually perhaps being the next segment, but you talked about the legal sector being disrupted. The law is social software. That is what the law is, and that has already been disrupted completely, right? So phase one has already happened or has already gone far. Definitely with the whole text to video, right? Phase 2, Q1, and we are seeing unprecedented things. It's already happening. Phase 3, right? It's already taken place. Internal, like all of these things are actually connected. So, socio, economic, technological. You're already seeing that pressure, right? And so the paradigm shift is actually happening. And a paradigm shift means everything that we consider to be a mental model goes out the door. But
Chizi, can I ask a question?
that is my part. Yeah.
No. But I need to ask a question real quick, because here's where, like, I feel like sometimes when we talk about the importance or the disruption of AI, though, right?
Yeah.
We speak of it as, yes, AI, to your point, admin and clerical work might be, or even some of the creative jobs, where just because AI is coming and disrupting a job or the need for that job doesn't necessarily, in my mind, equate to overall decrease in human labor needs, right? And what I mean by that is, like, right? So which is why it's hard for me to get to the post-labor model that I keep hearing about, because just because I no longer need to hire an admin and the 3 people that was my admin, their jobs are gone, doesn't necessarily mean that those 3 people will no longer have a need in the entire economy or capitalistic society that we have, right? It just means they are no longer doing that job. They are now doing something else. So that's what I see is it's an elimination of old jobs with the creation of new jobs along the way, rather than saying, oh, the entire pool is shrinking.
But it is also how we define labor, right? And what kind of labor? Sorry.
No, there's something else that you're talking about. What is that something else? And is this something that will be of value? And assuming that we are in an era where money makes sense, would that thing be valueless? Since, everybody will be doing the same thing, like it drives down the cost, right? Or the new, I want to understand.
It's an expansion, and that's what I'm saying. Listen, it's an expansion of human creativity unleashed in new ways, right? And we can talk about how, perfect example, even here, right? Like, yes, what we're able to do now, we today we might not need it. We don't need an editor now, right? Because we have a laptop, we have an opportunity to get up here and speak and share some of our, we become content creators, we become creatives. We have platforms where we're able to directly generate money from our audience because we're bringing value. We talk about, last time I talked about the role of a Chat GPT prompter. That is a job where people are starting to hire from who are the best people who are able to understand the best way to prompt some of these LLM models to be able to generate great outputs. Like, those are becoming more valuable in the new economy and systems. And also on top of that, we're going to see entrepreneurs like we've never seen before, where, people who might have been forced out of, I think, the labor markets because they don't have access to the Disneys of the world or some of these large Googles of the world, are starting to think about new things that they can do. So I don't like the feeling of saying we're putting a cap on human creativity. Like I said, human ingenuity, it's unbounded, right? We cannot think of some of the new companies that we have that are existing today, but once the internet came along, it empowered us in ways that we never even imagined. And I see AI as helping us do that in new ways.
Well, let me see you on the other side of the argument. The other side of the argument would be like, okay, you know what? I'm a millennial, I'm a baby boomer, whatever. I don't have, the experience with this thing called generative AI. I don't even have a laptop. I don't even know how to interact with these kind of tools. So if I'm somebody who's working for GM right now, I'm a factory guy, and do you think, I'm trying to understand again from the post-labor, because we are talking about it, that we are saying this, that people can move to a different set of jobs, but who is going to be creating those different set of jobs? And would they be employing? Because I don't think there's going to be an era where it sounds good that, hey, everybody can be their own boss, which is, I think that is where we need to go, because everybody has to figure out what their purpose in life is and build a business. But there are some people who don't want to do that. Who just want to have they value work, going to having a job as your purpose. So my question is, will the tech companies be training, do we have to reskill the workforce around AI so that the new prompt engineers will be equal to like the manufacturing floors for like back in the day when they manufacturing cars? Like, that's my question, because I think if that does not fix itself, there's going to be a rebellion towards the government, and that is where I guess To your point, what would be the role of the government? Would democracy exist? Because I think democracy is the best form of government today. It's not communism, it's not autocracy. Democracy, would that be disrupted? And what would that look like? Chizi, I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
So the disruption of government means the proliferation of decentralization, meaning it will break up into pockets, right? Numbers number, maximum people that you can have in a community, 150, 200, before you don't know every single person, right?
So there's going to be like
And I think
mini states, mini self-governance states.
essentially family becomes most important, right?
So the family
Your
becomes the
family
government agency.
becomes the true governing point, right? The family then actually becomes the governing point, and this is how, like, if you empower the smallest unit, the power then actually starts to rise from that point. As opposed to top down, it then actually becomes bottom up. And it then becomes that as a function of creating hyper-aligned communities that actually work with others, right? For the most part, because essentially a centralized government means that you had supply chains all across the world that were all unified. That's not happening anymore, right? If we need to even make the robots that we see coming into the future, you need materials. You actually need skill set. You need a strong supply chain logistical network. I mean, like, we should also think of the international geopolitical side of all this, right? Like, are the robots really going to be a thing in the US, or are they going to be more so what you see in China, right? Are we actually talking about futures that we're not going to see here? But ultimately, it's I think that for the person who is, say, in a GE job right now, AI or artificial intelligence, essentially, it has its basis in something called natural language programming, right? It's how we speak, and then the nuances of how we speak. Let's say that we achieve AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, right? Which people believe could happen in the next 7 to 8 months. That means that you would have something that could do everything that you could do on the internet, or every possible thing that you could do on the internet. You are now bounded by your own imagination. So actually, let's say you have this emergence of AI and hardware that is already happening, not solely from a robot perspective, but think of the phones that we have, right? You actually talked about spatial computing. Imagine that all these people then have the ability to go work in cars more easily, right? The ability to actually reference all this. They are the ones who have the intelligentsia. If you have an intelligentsia in a particular domain, you will be a beast at whatever AI that you use that is also hyper-aligned to that intelligentsia. You can do so many things at that point. Think of the older folks and how much knowledge and information and all of the three-letter words that they have and things of that nature to define everything. They could talk to a large language model better than anybody, right? And so I think that the more intelligence you have in a domain, the more you'll be able to create value in that domain, which is such a very spiritual thing, right? It's like these are the gifts that you've been given, right? And it is really a tool that expands on the creative gifts that man has been blessed with, like straight up, right? And that's we will create so many interesting things, and there'll be need for that. But I do want to mention that, hey, it is a paradigm shift. I don't think that there should be a lot of worry, because once you have spatial computing and people can just speak, just as they normally talk, and just go through their thoughts, like how people plan out something or do that. If you're more of an expansive planner, you'll be able to prompt in more depth. Prompting is just detailed execution and knowledge of the database, knowledge of the specialty of that particular large language model. So someone who has an intelligence in something will just be better than someone who has to go research it, right? Even though you have expertise that has now been scaled in this unprecedented way, you still need to be a domain expert to be able to prompt and execute more. Think of those who are in the health sector. They'll be able to better define what a software should be in that sector, right? They'll be able to actually prompt through it. But, I'll stop.
Until you final word before we move to the next.
Yeah, final word. Listen, like I said, our goal is to be that trusted advisor to the everyday. My key takeaway is there's a huge opportunity for upskilling and reskilling at the individual level. And long gone are the days where anybody, if you're 20, 30, you're coming into the workplace thinking, what I've learned at this point is all I'm going to learn, and I can just sit in my job for the next 30 to 35 years. Those days are gone, right? That's been disrupted completely. But the greatest gift that we have as humans is our ability to adapt. And so we do not take that for granted. Creativity, human imagination, and adaptability unlocks us in new ways than we've ever seen before. And AI is a tool that's going to allow us to do even more of that. And for those who takes that approach and embrace, I think they're going to find incredible success over the next 20 to 30 years. And those who want to remain stagnant, they certainly can expect to be disrupted and maybe on the shorter end of this AI disruption that we're going through right now.
Yeah, well said. And I like that's my final, take away through this. And I think, to quote, one of these evangelists said, human beings are broken into God's laboratory, where now, the word now becomes flesh. Now you can speak things into existence, and now the video picture appears. So I think we are moving to the era where instead of you having to code and spend hours, all you have to do is
all spiritual.
And then the picture appears.
Think of that kind of spiritual training. This is spiritual training at scale. Like I've been saying that the digital is a crutch for that. This is it at scale, man. Ask and you get, right? Like
yes.
Pray and ask, like, you know what I mean?
It's just God said, and then there was light, and there was light. So it's interesting how human beings are moving towards, trying to become godlike feature, like AI is like a godlike to that you could, again, godlike, tool that could be used for good and also be used for bad as well. I'm not sure if you saw the Taylor Swift. There's a deep fake of a picture porn that happened. It was very, very sad. So I'm hoping that we can build some regulation around that to make sure that it's used for good and not for bad. And speaking about AI, Shamath Palihapitiya, who is the founder for Social Capital, he made investment. He was one of he was on the executive team of Facebook, and he helped grow the company from tens of millions to close to 1 billion active users. And he made a comment about how AI is disrupting not only big stalwart companies today, but also the venture capital community. And he said that in the past, a tech startup with $2 million in seed funding might hire 7 people and have enough capital to survive for a year and a half. After which it hopefully gained enough traction so that investors would putting up $10 million or $15 million in Series A funding. The downside, of course, is that in each of that capital, VC want equity in the company. Yep. That's what we talked about. And also, he also mentioned the point about how now, instead of you taking up, $10 million for, let's say, 20% of the company, now all you need is $5 million for, or you can say take the same 10 for less equity in the business, because now you can only hire, less people, and the run rate of the business is going to go further. So I guess, and the question would be, I'd like to hear your thought, and also, actually, before I transition, I want to talk about the other article that came up around the LLM models, how it's really transforming the legal sector. And I've been working with a legal client. They're very skeptical about AI because of their data and their clients. So it's something that we can double click on. But there was a recent article that came out around how large language models is actually transforming, the legal system. It said, and the conclusion from that paper talked about how it said our findings shows that LLMs perform on par with LPOs and junior lawyers, accurately determining legal issues within contract. Notably, when it comes to the speed of contract reviews, large language models demonstrate a significant advantage due to their computational efficiency, which enables them to process and analyze text much faster than human practitioners, which is crazy. In conclusion, he said, that the cost analysis show that LLMs offer a substantially cheaper alternative for contract review when compared to the costs associated with junior lawyers and LPOs. So basically it's talking about how these large language models is actually doing things with less. So before I yield the floor to Chizi, I'd like to define some terms for the audience so that we're on the same page. So large language models, they are basically essentially complex algorithms that are trained on vast amounts of data. So it allows them to understand and respond to language in a nuanced way, like a human would. That's pretty much what a large language model is. They can perform various tasks like generating different creative text formats like poems, code, scripts, musical pieces. They can also answer your questions in a very informative way, even if they are open-ended and challenging. They help a translation of languages as well. And then we have some examples of these large language models, whether it's Facebook's Llama 2, Google AI's Pound, Microsoft's Jurassic one, and also obviously the obvious one is the OpenAI Chat GPT 4, where it's transforming that industry. So, Chizi, from your perspective, I guess my question to you is: yes, LLMs is transforming how, from a back office perspective, or from from a manual task perspective, it's transforming that industry. But my question to you is: if you recall, David Shapiro talked about how, in terms of the phases, the phase that will be disrupted versus the non-regulated industries. But with industries that are regulated, it might be difficult because of the gravity of the government. For example, you can't have a robot doctor to operate on your body. I want a human being to operate on me, even though there could be a potential robot that could do some surgical operations. So I guess from your perspective, do you believe that large language models will proliferate across this legal industry? And what are some of the repercussions from that? And will there be massive layoffs for junior practitioners and lawyers?
Man, yeah. I think that one of the guys who was actually doing, like he's doing some stuff with, like he's a lawyer that is in this AI technology sector. He essentially said, hey, I don't need to hire any more paralegals anymore because of this. And they see the writing on the wall, right? This is the initial threat of that paradigm shift, which is taking away the need for government, which changes how we see regulation, right? Because who in government can actually regulate this? Who is the true regulator here, right? I think that people have this issue. So regulation always precedes, or regulation always trails technology, right? If you have the ability to essentially disrupt the ability to have a lawyer, like I have done this for myself, right? Where I have used ChatGPT instead of this, where I could create something, send it to a lawyer to actually take one quick look over, edit, and that's it. It is a one iteration edit at max, right? If need be, right? This has already changed. So much so that GPT-4 was able to beat the bar exam. That is a reasoning test, right? So that has taken place. And if you have this disruption happen, that means that government can be disrupted. So this is interesting that we are asking for regulation as regulation is being disrupted, right? So this is like a paradigm shift has an art to it, right? It is almost paradoxical in nature. It is almost recursive. So I think it has already, right? I think that I was using ChatGPT the other day, and it was just only recently, and maybe they have actually changed this, where they changed up their model to be able to not do legal work. And I think it's because they had enough pressure from actually people to actually stop that particular ability. But other models exist. But I've been using this enough, and I saw when they stopped doing legal work, it would say, I can't do that, talk to a legal professional. Do you know how crazy that is?
That's what I was talking about.
Do you know how crazy that is?
You the floor to Toyyib. That's what I was talking about. I mean, at some point, human beings will step in. For example, if you recall when Facebook was a threat to the government from a social media perspective in terms of how they disseminated news, some could call it fake news or prompt. The government had to step in, and now there's talks about taking away there's this term in the I forgot the name of there's a law, Section 230. There's still debate about, do we need to revoke that from social media companies like the Twitters of the world and Facebook? So the government had to step in. So Toyyib, my question to you is, I mean, legal is definitely highly regulated because of how you're dealing with human beings. Like, for example, if there's a RICO charge on you and you have a human robot or an AI sifting through the case to help to help you argue your case. Do you think that that will be disrupted? And also, what is the role of government? How do you think government at some point will have to step in and say, guys, listen, no, we have to protect the sanctity of this legal profession or the healthcare profession? Yeah, your thoughts on that?
Great question. Listen, AI is disrupting any and every industry that exists. I don't care what your profession is. My profession as a strategist in a tech space, your profession as a seller in any space, a product manager, a lawyer, a doctor, whoever it is, it's coming in your space. Today, though, I see it as a tool that helps you be faster, better, cheaper, right? Yes. And the competition now really becomes who's able to move the fastest. So maybe, right, in the past, if you have a large law firm, you have 15 lawyers reviewing these documents and flipping through, you're like, guys, that becomes less of the focus. The focus become what's the strategy that helps us win this case. Let's allow the AI models to review some of the content of this of the legal documents, and then we are on the strategy side, and our job is to move quickly on, hey, let's submit whatever documents we need to and leverage the human side of it. So yes, the industry will certainly absolutely get disrupted. The second question around what's the government's role, Chizi, you hit this right on the nail when you said, right, that the government or the regulation trails the technology advancements. Government are going to be reactive, right? They're going to listen to their stakeholders and whoever in some ways are making the noise around this technology is moving too fast. It's creating disruption in a way where we as humans are not able to adjust quickly. Absolutely, government will have to step in and regulate that, right? You can't live in an economy, or you can't, as a government, be in a space where you have 50% unemployment, 60% unemployment. You have if unemployment gets to 20%, we have real issues. So absolutely, the role of government is then to be able to figure out, well, you can't actually stop the boom of the technology, but you absolutely have to start to figure out how do we manage to roll out? In what spaces are we slowly going to allow that to happen? And I expect more and more regulation to come through, but it's going to be very reactive to what we see in the tech space first.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I'm going to shift back to what Shema was talking about, how that is disrupting the VC or the venture capital industry, because just for the audience to know, a venture capital is your company's organization that invest in small startup companies, and they take a piece of the company, they try to nurture it, invest in it, and take it public, and then they exit. For example, I think it was Andreessen Horowitz might have invested in Dropbox or Uber, one of those guys, yeah, and they took it public and they make money. So now that we have AI proliferation and a lot of people are getting up to speed around, okay, I can do more with less, I could do it better, faster, and cheaper today. Chizi, from your perspective, given that you're a startup founder and you're in the bowels of building companies like Dumile, Smart CEO, what are you seeing in this sector? For example, has the funding structure changed in terms of how potential investors, seed investors, angel investors are approaching companies that are starting up today?
Okay, can you hear me? Oh,
yes.
Okay, yeah. Perfect. I am actually looking to see if I can show you something.
Yeah.
Let me see what I can find. Let me just. Okay, give me a second. So I have raised, like I would say 1.5 million, about that. Totally. And like, yeah, being in this VC sector, like I have watched things change, right? And there is a slide that I want to show. Okay, just quickly, before I do that. So you have equity, traditional debt, and you have something else emerging that I actually think is fascinating. And I think this is how Dumoulin wants to raise his funds, right? Because of exactly what you said, we still know that we need investment, right? But it's just like, well, there is a way to get investment without doing certain things. Because of artificial intelligence, because of actually the focus of Dumoulin, actually what the goal is, right? It can be owned by another person, right? So essentially, that need for a founder to say, I want capital from you without you ever owning equity in me and actually making any sort of decision that I make, right? I now have more power. Now, what have I seen? You have the safe notes, you actually have the convertible notes, you have all the different kinds of vehicles, right, that you have from an equity perspective. But if I don't need that, then I could actually easily build something that I can sell and showcase some that is just some level of profit. What I've seen right now, and what I find very interesting, is that people are thinking of different kinds of corporate bond structures, similar to what OpenAI did when working with Microsoft. They essentially said, we will have all that we will ever give you is 100x multiple on what you gave us. So essentially, you have a new kind of investment tool where I could say, hey, I want to raise $2 million. And I know that the max of what I want to give is a 30x multiple. 10x multiple is what everyone tries to strive for. But if I have a 30x multiple over like a longer domain, and like it's just a matter of how many businesses can I invest in that can give me a 10x or 15x multiple, right? You have now totally changed how that is how people invest while still making it good for the investors, because it's really about the 10x return, right? From a return on capital perspective, right? Or time towards return on investment, right? What you essentially have is a scenario where using this new kind of model, you can say, hey, instead of giving you 10x return, I will give you 30x return, right? But that's it, right? And let's say every single round that I then raise, I will then have a smaller X return for people over time because I'm growing until I don't need it anymore, right? So this is how the shift of power happens. Money actually transfers properly when you have a paradigm shift happening. And I think that this is actually going from sole capital allocators to founders in this way. And I have seen an example where no one is asking, it's like, hey, it is actually based on the construct, but I think that this will apply here, right? And it's so interesting to actually see it. It's people will be saying, hey, we want to raise funding as a function of giving you a 20x multiple, 30x multiple, because we know that you don't get that is as a VC, as an investor, on average. So I have my domain of time that I actually like. I get your capital, and it becomes something of a corporate bond structure. So the same way that governments took bonds, what you have is the proliferation of that power, the ability to organize and synthesize information at scale, happening on a smaller and smaller and smaller perspective. I think that we will see the return of corporate bond structures.
Interesting. And I'll use the floor to I'll set it up for Toyyib. During in the era of ZERP, we had people being heroes or an amazing investor who generated a lot of returns for their investors because capital was cheap, right? The government did not increase interest rates. So when the government or the Fed, Jerome Powell, sort of increased the interest rate, and now it's sitting about 5.25 to 5.5 in terms of the Fed funds rate, it caused the tech company to be re-rated. If you recall, I forgot yes. Who was DoorDash was crazy valuation. It got re-rated down. Most of the tech companies got huge re-rated, and they came back to fundamental principles today. So I guess my question to you is, given the the effect of interest rates towards the evaluation of companies today, are VCs now going to start thinking about, hey, do you have a product market fit? Do you have instead of me just writing you a check without you having a customer, like at least you got to show me something. I think that's the era that I'm thinking we need to go towards, where VC venture capital, because if I recall, was it SoftBank or Vision Fund? Masa Yusuf was writing $100 million checks to Series A. Not even Series A, to seed companies.
He had so much money though. He had $100 billion fund.
Right.
So yes.
But again, they had to deploy because I'm sure they had like a timeline for deployment. Because they didn't deploy
Okay.
the Call GPs or the LPs. You can ask for, hey, this is what I do with my money. I could put that money in a treasury bill, get whatever percentage on it. So I guess from my perspective to you, what is the right way for VCs, or how do they need to approach investing in companies?
Yeah. That's the question that they're asking, right? And Shamath made a great point on, the potential of AI, and we've talked about AI, but yeah, disrupting his own space as well, because Chizi hit it right on the mark when you talk about the shift of power back to the founders. And I feel like in some ways, those are the real people who are going to benefit a lot from some of these disruption, right? Someone who is nimble, who is adaptable, who has great ideas and is able to move quickly. Like, those people are greatly suited to survive and succeed in this kind of era, because what you have is this lower barrier of entry in some ways, right? So if you're an entrepreneur and you have a great idea, and before, right, you needed to go to someone like Shamath to get $10 million just to get started, right? Before you could even have some kind of MVP, minimum viable product that you could show in the marketplace. You almost came in there hat in hand, ready to exchange 20, 30, 40% of your idea just so that someone like Shamath can write the check. Well, imagine what you could do now if you're able to make, because you have AI and you have a few other tools that allows you not necessarily to be able to build your minimum viable product without getting a check early on. It puts you in the driver's seat, right? And now you'll have more of the bargaining chip, right? You're able to speak up more than
absolutely.
when early on when you had no product. And you look at something like what happened with Mark Zuckerberg, right? By the time Mark Zuckerberg got his first check, he had already started to show traction, and he was able to keep such high ownership that now, obviously, he's 39-year-old and $100 billion plus. We're starting to see more of that. I think is what's gonna happen with a lot more entrepreneurs. You look at what Amazon Web Services did, right, in the data service space, where as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, I don't no longer need to build my own service, right? I could just leverage AWS. If you're a retailer, you no longer need brick and mortar. You could just you could just use Shopify. Those things have allowed you as an entrepreneur to be able to build your business a bit further before you then go to the VCs. And then, so if you go back on the VC side, you need to now be more diligent in the founders you invest in, because you need to be betting on the horse, right? You need to bet on your rider here rather than just the horse, right? So, and I think that's going to be the new model. Who are the entrepreneurs that's moving, that's nimble, that's adaptable, that's got creative ideas and able to really compete? Those are who they're going to have to bet on and be willing to take, I think, a lower percentage than what they were used to in the past.
No, I think that's right, and I think in terms of that, with this definitely in mind, I'm thinking we are moving to the era for in terms of first principles, going back to the basics. For example, even in the real estate industry, there's been a lot of re-rating in the market. A lot of people took loans, capital debt, that has disrupted their business. Some of them actually had to turn in their keys, as we can see in the office space, and even in some apartment space as well. There's been a lot of lots of co-GPs or real estate investment firms today that have had to go back to the basics and say, are we properly allocating capital? Again, I think in the era where money was free and money was cheap, everybody was a hero. Everybody was just going out and buying things that they didn't really need, or they thought, hey, listen, if it's free, like there was no downside. So I'm glad that this interest rate had to be. I mean, they had to increase the interest rate to fight inflation, which is definitely a key component to that. So with this, I'm hoping that businesses are going to go back to the fundamental principles. What is my product? Who's my target market? And how can I obviously leverage AI to expedite this process? So it's going to be interesting in the next couple of years how things shakes out. Who are going to be the biggest winners and the biggest losers, and then obviously new companies will develop as well from that perspective. So that's just my 2 cents here. And again, I wanted to also talk about how actually the biggest winners in the AI was not going to be. Yeah, they're going to be the the new the those who develop applications from those AI. But what we also forgot to add is that AI is built on data and a data set, which means that you need huge, data centers surround it. So you need a chip, you need compute to process that information. And the biggest players in the game is what? Amazon Web Services, Google, Microsoft. So it sounds like the big is going to get bigger, and that's why they develop all these LLM models. So the big is going to get bigger, but now if I'm a startup founder, I'm trying to figure out, okay, how can I leverage AI today to build a next generation of product that customers need, number one, and number two, how can I do that and be capital light? Meaning that how can I approach investors and say, listen, I have an amazing product, I can tax my money, but I can give you 20% of my business. I'm going to give you 5%. Are you down for the ride? And then hopefully in 10 years you can exit for $500 million instead of having 1,000 employees with diluted, stake in the, in your company, and then having to cry foul because and complain that the VC taking money didn't help you. So it's going to be very interesting, the next generation of companies that we produced with this AI, and also with the current financial market conditions around how capital is being deployed today. Okay, so I'd like us to touch on briefly on I think we'll use the next 5 minutes to briefly touch on some key topics, and then we'll do it quickly. So the ones around I think Apple came up with with spatial computing product today. There's been a lot of hoopla around. Ooh, this is too expensive, $3,000. Of course, it's going to be expensive. It's just their V1 version, and Apple's saying that I don't see myself wearing a big ass, excuse my French here, glasses and walking around. So I guess, Chizi, from your perspective, is spatial computing here to stay? Is it like the iPhone moment? Has Tim Cook created an iPhone moment for Apple to resurrect? Because again, when Steve Jobs died, there's never been any revolutionary product that they made. This is like the next generation of it. So from your perspective, Chizi, is spatial computing here to stay? And what are potential use cases that you foresee?
I would like to speak about spatial computing from the perspective of natural language processing, right? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. If you can essentially raise your hands up in the air and speak, right, things into happening, or push and touch, almost like that whole Minority Report, right? Your mode of input has now become easier. It's now voice and hand gestures. It's not typing. It is not needing to know certain scripts, right? It is just speaking and having things take place, right? Spatial computation is also immersive, right? When you're actually trying to do some work, you want to have your own privacy. It is not really about a screen anymore because someone else can see it. It is about what actually happens when you actually put a headset on. From a Dumile perspective, I actually believe that definitely for the African continent and moving forward, it is only an all spatial computing. So I just want to just show you guys that is a brief example of actually what I have here. This is called the X-Reel, right? Headset. You actually see where the USB-C is here, and there is a little piece of hardware.
Who manufactured that glass? Manufacturers?
It is a Chinese. It is a Chinese-based manufacturer. It is an American company, and I think that they're actually American or actually from the UK, but it's called X-Reel. This is 10 times cheaper than Apple, and they actually released this in October of last year because they did not want to compete with Apple in January. So this is new, right? This helps give me a 120-inch screen, right? And I could put that in 3 places, and I have a keyboard that is like a very light piece of thing that I use economically, like it folds. This here is about $550, and it has totally changed my need for a screen, totally changed a few things. There are apps loaded on this, from Netflix to Prime to whatnot, that I can just take this alone without actually connecting this to my computer set and I could watch movies and talk to people and hear them through this. Spatial computing has fundamentally made my life easier, right? It makes me have a private screen, right, that I could actually see through, right? It actually gives me, it's when you actually take that to something that is more voice controlled and then hand gesture controlled, you don't have the need for a keyboard, right? And there's a lot of waste and lack of design that you end up not having, right? Because you essentially have a different input format. There is so much that one can save from a sustainable perspective to not have a keyboard. Also, the Chinese, when they wanted to actually create their own keyboard, they had a lot of difficulties, right? And so they had to essentially break their language into something called pinyin or kinyin to fit the QWERTY keyboard, right? Looking at, say, the African continent, for example, we have now leaped past that. We don't ever need to create keyboards. We can only have natural language inputs, right? We don't need to actually go and build all these things, right? We don't have to break our language. We can take our own scripts, our own forms, our own actually whatever, and purely just spatially compute, right? And then you have a high level of privacy where people don't see what you're seeing, but also you can even bring in this thing of digitized secret societies where I have this thing here, but I can see, say, something here that no one else can see, right? Because it's just me, right? And it's just going to be, I can talk so much about this, but I purely believe it. Let me stop there before I actually get ahead of
It was
myself.
very insightful. It was very insightful. So, Toyyib, what are your thoughts on it?
Super
Spatial computing
insightful.
here to stay?
Yep, Chizi, I feel like you and I are sinking today because I have not been more excited about anything in a while since spatial computing. Do I believe in it? Absolutely. Am I excited about it? Absolutely. Is this thing revolutionary? Absolutely. Are we in the early phase of this? Absolutely, right?
Absolutely.
And when we talk about, to your point around spatial computing, right, we're talking about blending both the digital content and your physical space to create this more immersive experience, right? And
Yes.
and is it certainly with Apple's Vision Pro, $3,500? This is version 1. I believe, right, subsequent products and versions will be lower end. But
Yeah,
to be able to
AI-powered.
create this, this immersive experience now, I look at one of the use cases that even just the three of us here together, right? We're all sitting at home, even though we're having this, we're able to see each other. It's a different experience if we are able to have headset on and it feels like we're in the same room together, right? Imagine what that does for remote work, where instead of, yes, I'm looking at my 5 co-workers on a laptop screen, I have a headset on and it feels like we're in the same room together. Those type of experience are more immersive than what we have today, right? And the key, I do think, to success in this space, and I think which is why a few of the other predecessors before Apple came out with this version, Meta has one with the Quest Pro, I believe, right? And a few others. The key, though, is going to really be on the developers who are building the applications on these platforms. It's really what's made the iPhone successful. Listen, the iPhone is great, but what made iPhone what it is the App Store and these millions of entrepreneurs coming in along and building so many creative new apps that makes this thing so invaluable. The same has to happen in this spatial computer space, where you have to now design amazing app experiences. I mean, my experience to go do, I'm in the market now. I'm trying to buy a new car, right? And what does that experience look like? Oh, yeah, I have to call the dealer. I have to take off on a Friday. I've got to get behind the car and go sit inside and see what it looks like when I'm in it. Are those experiences that you can actually bring into your own living room with just a Vision Pro headset, where now you imagine what it feels like to sit inside of. Caleb wants a brand new G63. So, right, instead of having to go down to the Mercedes dealership, can you just experience what it's like to sit inside of the G-Wagon and experience all the recent functionality? And now you test drive 2-3 cars without never leaving your home. You make up your mind, and the only time you go out is to go pick up the car. I mean, these are the kind of immersive experiences that you can really have, but it's going to be dependent on the marketplace, the application that's built on these platforms to really unleash new levels of human productivity. I am excited about it. I think it's going to revolutionize so many different things, and I can't wait to see how this continues to grow.
Guys, you sound articulate, you sound great, but I'm actually scared. And here's why. And again, I'm not just saying this to get. I'm actually scared because number one, if you recall, social media today proliferates every part of human social behavior, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, whatever you have. And there was an article that came out by this company, National Library of Medicine. It was an NIH, the relation between cell phone usage and the physical and mental well-being of university students. But I'm going to say the mental for the population. And this is what it says. I'll just give a quick synopsis of that. It says, where is it? I said, excessive usage of cell phone was common during at night, leading to sleep disturbances, leading to perceived physical ill-being, exhaustion, and symptoms related to physical health. Where is it? I was looking for the other portion of it. Where is it at? Yeah, here it is. He gave some. Hold on a second. I'll pull it up real quick. Oh, how did right here? Where's it at? Eye strain, muscular. Oh, hold on. Yeah. Here's what I'm looking for. Yeah. It said. Here's what it says. It said those studies have demonstrated that the use of cell phone can positively benefit in supporting physical and mental well-being. Recent reviews have argued that excessive cell phone use is a type of addictive behavior and it can affect well-being. A 3-year longitudinal study conducted among adolescents found cell phone usage to be a significant predictor of depression among emerging young adults. Furthermore, adults' excessive cell phone usage was associated with depressive mood, anxiety, and loneliness. Interestingly, users spending excessive time on cell phone had higher stress level. It was noted in the study that problematic cell phone usage is associated with psychological distress and emotional dysregulation. Excessive cell phone users were also found to be associated with obsessive compulsive disorder behaviors and symptoms related to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD.
Yeah.
Immense use of cell phones and adverse attitude and feeling of anxiety can increase the risk of depression and anxiety. Furthermore, several studies conducted amongst excessive cell phone users have validated the effect of problematic cell phone use, including digital stress, low self-esteem, worries and anger, loneliness, anxiety, depression, mood disorders. Yeah. This is what again, this is cell phone. This is having a cell phone and not, I can, at least regulate in some way. I could, put it on airplane mode. But imagine having this stuck to I'm wearing like a piece of glasses, walking around, talking to this like a robot. We lose the sense of relationship. How do we build intimate relationship? I think we're going to move to a world where if this is not checked, and like you said, Chizi, in the beginning, that a human family has to become the governing agency. If you don't build them in place, we cannot interact with each other anymore. Now, getting a like, I'm just thinking about it. Look at how getting likes on Instagram, you're excited. I have 3 million views. Now we are getting likes, or we have friends, but we don't have relationship with people. We are not building that one-on-one. We need to go to the bars. We need to go to churches. We need to build that one-on-one relationship. And imagine a world where there's glasses on top of you. All you do is watching the video, interacting with it back and forth, and you actually blocking yourself from actually talking to a human being. That is the reason why I'm actually scared about this. And I'm not saying this to be extreme. What I think to conclude is, Chizi, it's around. I'm glad that we can live. There's definitely some applications around spatial computing. You can use it, for example, in your factory floor to train your engineers to fix a certain product. It'll actually empower the engineers. Or you can use it to, if I'm looking to a virtual tour, I can do that. But if this product type, if the application moves into consumer use, where now I can be watching videos and nothing about it, not to say, the word, but there could be people watching pornography, walking around the street.
Yeah.
And your wife, they cannot see what you're doing because now I don't have to close my laptop. when I have a glass, you know what I'm doing. I'm just chilling and I'm watching the glass. I'm
Yeah.
watching whatever videos I'm watching on. So these are some of the repercussions that I think needs to be checked, or else it'll lead to depression, anxiety, mood disorders, and it'll bifurcate us from actually having real conversation with people, and we're going to be interacting with the machines, and that's not where I want this world to be. Cheesy, and I want to be excited to jump in. I think you're me, Cheesy.
Did Chizi? Yeah, Chizi just went on mute. Go ahead.
You're me.
Actually, just actually
Yep.
coming up on time here, but
Yes.
but 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 there is, so this guy, David Huberman, like he's the one who talks about the, just cracking yourself biologically, or just biologically hacking, right? So there was this concept of breathing, which he talked about. We have the mouth breathers and people who are actually non-mouth breathers. People who are actually mouth breathers end up having a small neck, like everything actually collapses. But if you breathe normally, like gives like a strong jawline, things of that nature, and helps with actually better breath, right?
Yeah.
This is how small physical actions lead to major impact that is in someone's life, right? They can end up dying. It is more sickness. It's less health just by that, right? Now, mobile phones. Let us look at the way that these are built and how we use them. We put our heads down. There is a concept of saying, hey, put your head up, right? Putting your head up does something psychologically to you, right? Then putting your head down, right? So the form factor that we're looking at here is, we're not just comparing this, we're also comparing the human action that is engaging with this, right?
Right.
With with the glass, your head is up. It changes how you do things. One, this is fully occluded, meaning it's just a screen, nothing else, right? The world is interesting. The world is a movie. We like movies because we want to watch information about the world. So when you have, so also looking at these sort of spatial computing, you have actually VR and AR, right? Essentially, one is full occlusion versus actually non-full occlusion. Full occlusion means that they can actually control how it looks and everything down to the very pixel. But no full occlusion means that you can use the world as your own pixel. And why they like that is that you have millions of pixels in reality. So we would need to create glasses that you can see through with your head up and talk to other people. It's a very different kind of engagement through technology, right? We have engaged with fully occluded face down, right? Which does something to you psychologically, right? Especially more in a submissive mode, right? And depression and all of these negative things. And people don't actually realize that, right? But once you have that is a different kind of form factor where you look up and you see, the technology is most optimized if it's actually see-through because it uses a natural pixel of the environment as opposed to actually creating your own. More energy efficient spatial computing will need to be more see-through. So with your head up, you look at other people and other areas. Yes, can you do actually certain horrible things here, right? Yes, you can, but there's some other things to also take into consideration. Another technological side is artificial intelligence being embedded into hardware, right? You as a parent, Toyyib, can actually curate the persona of the AI that actually controls your daughter's spatial computing device by actually saying, don't do these things for her. Already commanded. You don't have to watch it anymore, right? AI makes that possible. And AI and that hardware from a spatial computing perspective introduces new things. Same actually for you as well. Caleb, it is actually better influence on the kind of content that your child can see, for example, right? But at least we would have less depressive people and perhaps more proud people because we are now keeping our head up as opposed to keeping our head down. So that's
I mean, I'll probably say you are partially right, and I don't go back and forth. So, to you, I'll give you the final word, and then we can.
No, I mean, certainly, I'm on the side of Chizi here in terms of how I see the benefit of spatial computing, but I do acknowledge, to your point, the downside effects of it, right?
Yeah.
We've certainly seen that with social media, which does amazing things and has provided amazing opportunity, but also has also created new opportunities for evil and dark things to be more pervasive in the society. There's no doubt about that. And iPhones might have some of that benefits as well. Spatial computing will have that, but it's always hard to be able to have such significant advancement in technology in all good without always some of that downside, right? Like it's always that balance, and hopefully, government regulation will come along that make some of that better, but it's more difficult, and it's some of the effects or factors of building such powerful technologies. It could be great depending on what hands it is on, and it can be awful depending on who's using it. So these are tools, and at the end of the day, we humans have to step up and be accountable and how we're leveraging these tools to improve our lives.
Awesome. Well, that wraps up episode 4 of the Wealth Weight podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. At the Wealth Weight podcast, again, our goal is to feed the mind and during the times when it comes to investment philosophies, market insights, real estate strategies as well. So before I guess we adjourn the meeting, Chizi, do you have any final words you'd like to add? And also, how can people follow you on social media? What is your social media page? And hear about some of the great, insights about how what's going on in the industry.
Private, that is on my social media, right? Like I would say, guys, follow the podcast, follow these guys. That is actually first and foremost, right? They will tag me in there, and so then maybe you can see my social media there. But Dumile.io, definitely please check it out. Those who want to join us, please do come join us. There is a lot that we're doing there. Like I'll be speaking in the conference shortly, and it's great that this was a precursor. So actually definitely please check that out. Also check out joinunity.com, joinjunity.com, to see some of the work that we're doing there as well. But I just want to say that this was a phenomenal conversation, and this could have gone on for much longer, right?
Yeah,
and it feels like actually we didn't have time. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Hopefully, there is another time to actually share a few thoughts. But the philosophical points and how you guys have guided this was really enjoyable, right? So thank you very much for this. Guys, follow them.
We appreciate it. Yeah, so we'll definitely drop in a Dumile link below, and the link, and also the Join Unity link below. So please like and subscribe, follow Chizi, and Toyyib, anything you wanted to add before?
No, as always, Chizi, my man, appreciate you, all that you've done in your own tech space and coming on as a guest. And like I said, none of this would be possible without you as really helping it. The introduction of Caleb, like I told my wife this morning, it's changed our lives. I'm so happy to have met Caleb through you, and I'll be telling my great-grandkids about this story for many years to come. So I appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you. Wow,
so
humbled.
Please like and subscribe so that you don't miss out on the future episodes. So thanks a lot for joining us today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you guys next week on another episode of the Wealth Weight podcast. Bye-bye.
Yep.